We are now in part 2 of Extra Histories, Saladin, and the Third Crusade series.
Horns of Hattin, July 4th, 1187. The battle is over. Bodies lie across the slopes, dismembered and baking in the sun. There are thousands of captives, but Saladin has asked for two of them by name, Guy de Lusignan, King of Jerusalem, and Reynold of Chatillon. When they come, Saladin's palatial tent is still being set up. Saladin then offers Guy a glass of iced julep, and the king, dying of thirst, sucks it down. It's a relief in more ways than one. He knows that in Muslim culture, to offer someone sustenance is a promise they will not be harmed. Guy then hands the cup to Reynold, but Saladin interrupts. He had given the cup to Guy, not Reynold. The Sultan stands, berating Reynold for his blasphemy and treachery, for breaking the peace between Saladin and the Crusader states by attacking pilgrim caravans, for blaspheming God and torturing Muslims. He then gives Reynold a choice, convert or die. Reynold refuses, and with one stroke, Saladin strikes off his head. And upon seeing how the king now shakes, the Sultan leans in and assures Guy no harm will come to him. Kings, he says, do not kill kings.
Chad, baller line. But yeah, that's terrifying. What the heck? But yeah, actually beyond, I get that definitely, because yeah, he was basically being a huge aggressor, so kind of brought it on himself there.
The Battle of Hattin is often listed among the most pivotal military victories in world history. This is because Saladin had done much more than engage and defeat the armies of the Crusader states. He had utterly destroyed them. He had broken the military power of the Latin kingdoms to the point that they could garrison castles but had no field army. He'd captured the True Cross, the most holy relic of the Crusader states, dealing a severe blow to the kingdom's morale and spurning a minor crisis of faith. And finally, he had taken hostage the King of Jerusalem, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and so many high-ranking nobles that once the captives' families ransomed them back, their financial ability to wage war was diminished. The lower-ranking captives, those without a noble family to bail them out, were largely sold into slavery, flooding the Damascus markets to the point that a Christian slave could be had for only 3 dinars. Knights of the military orders, the Knights Templar and Hospitaller, who were too dangerous to let live, and useless as captives because they refused to be ransomed, were executed clumsily by clerics a few days after the battle. Only those few who did convert to Islam were spared. It was a monumental victory, but to make it count,
Yeah, now, again, like we covered last video, just more than decisive. He basically crushed them in like one battle, which is insane, you know? And now it's like, how do you use a great victory, right? Like, winning a victory is one thing, but you gotta use it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing just how he does it.
Saladin knew he had to capitalize on it quickly. See, much like the Christian force that they had just defeated, Saladin's army was a coalition of semi-rivals. For over a decade, Saladin had essentially struck a bargain with the leaders of the Muslim Middle East. Unite under the leadership of Saladin, accept the primacy of the Ayyubid dynasty, and he would defeat and conquer the Crusader states. And while this victory had shut the doubters up temporarily, he still needed to take a big prize in order to make that bargain seem fully worthwhile. And there was really only one objective that would truly vindicate him: Jerusalem.
The Kingdom of Jerusalem! But, yeah, as we know, he does take it, which sparks, you know, also his rivalry with Richard the Lionheart. And man, the amount of battles that have been had for this city are insane, guys. Like, you know, I've mentioned on and off that I'm a Christian. You know, I've read the Bible. I had to for Bible college to get my bachelor's in theology. So there's a lot to this city and its significance, not only in religious history, but secular history as well. And probably one of the most symbolic and important, maybe even the most important city, like, in the world. And, yeah, just so much has happened around this place. I won't go too deep into it because I don't like talking too much about the religious aspects, at least not on this channel. My other channel, Edwin de Jesus, I do. But, yeah, there's just a lot about this.
It wasn't the most strategically important target. That would be Tyre, with its defensive walls and positions on the Silk Road, but Jerusalem was symbolically crucial. Considered the second holiest city in Islam, Jerusalem contained the Dome of the Rock, the site where the Prophet Muhammad was said to have ascended to heaven, standing on the rock where Abraham had prepared to sacrifice his son to God. Across from it was the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where the Prophet had led prayers. And both were on the Temple Mount, a site also sacred to Jews and Christians. But when the First Crusade took Jerusalem in 1099, they'd turned the Dome of the Rock into a Christian church, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque into a palace, and later headquarters for the Knights Templar. By Islamic standards, this had spiritually polluted both sites, particularly the Dome of the Rock, since the alterations had included religious art depicting human figures, which are forbidden in Islam. But if Saladin could reverse...
Yeah, I don't even think they've... Like, I think a big thing that I've heard a lot about is that you're not allowed to make images of the Prophet Muhammad. That's a big no-no among, Islam. So it is interesting. While other Christian art, depicts, you kind of see, like, in certain churches or cathedrals, depictions, like, glass windows of figures and of saints and... religious paintings. So it is interesting. That is a cool little interesting difference. It's funny because in a way, Islam, Judaism, Christianity they all fall under the umbrella of the Abrahamic religions, mainly covering Abraham, the Bible, like the Torah, the first 5 books, or the Jewish Torah, or like the first 5 books of the Bible, and the Quran covers a lot of the beats from the Bible, and the Torah, from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, many of the famous stories that you may have heard of regarding religion. So it is interesting just to see, and even within these sects following under the Abrahamic religions, there is division. Obviously, you could talk about Christianity and all the denominations and how, certain Christians believe this while others don't, and it's all over the place, but it is just interesting, I think, they kind of fall under that umbrella, and you still see a lot of fighting between the 2 or 3, there's a lot to it.
What the Muslim world looked on as an 88-year occupation, it would legitimize his campaign. And Jerusalem lay nearly undefended, with Guy having thrown everything into Hattin. Saladin swept into Christian-held Palestine, taking city after city. Knowing that his forces might splinter if defeated, or even pinned down in a siege, he kept the speed of the advance up by offering the Christian cities generous terms if they surrendered without a fight. All Christians had the option to stay, their properties unmolested, provided they agreed to pay a tax. And those that wanted to leave would have 40 days to settle their affairs and would not be attacked as they made their way to Tyre. When the cities agreed, and most did, he ensured the agreements were honored. That summer, Saladin captured most cities in the Latin Kingdom, save Tyre, and arrived outside Jerusalem in late September with an army of 20,000, where they found themselves facing a pitiful defense force. The Christian leader was Balian of Ibelin, a crusader noble who'd escaped Hattin and made it to Tyre with 3,000 men, the only noble to escape with his troops. Separated from his wife and children in Jerusalem, which everyone knew was headed for a siege, he'd brokered a safe passage agreement with Saladin that allowed him to pick up his family and escort them through the Muslim lines to his home city of Tripoli. But to get that sweet deal, he'd sworn an oath not to fight Saladin, or stay in Jerusalem for longer than a day. But when Balian and his 16 knights arrived in the Holy City, the Patriarch of Jerusalem declared him absolved of the oath and charged him with the city's defense. He accepted, even though it would mean murdering his family. Balian then sent a message to Saladin, informing him that he would be staying in Jerusalem. Saladin's reaction? He sent soldiers to escort Balian's family to safety in Tripoli. the kind of merciful act Saladin would later become famous for. But with no knights in this...
I've heard regarding, Saladin is that his enemies respected and liked him, which is interesting. Sometimes in war, obviously, there's a lot of villainizing the other side. Oh, they're, obviously either through propaganda or just, like, bitterness. But Saladin was actually super, you could say honorable. I think that's a good word to use. Honorable, a guy who you could really respect and even admire, even being his enemy, So I think that's just, it really, really just makes him look good, And, yeah.
City but his escort, Balian hastily knighted 60 squires and scratched together a few thousand in a defense force. Tradesmen carried spears, women manned the wall defenses, and on September 20th, Saladin attacked the Tower of David and the Damascus Gate, sending clouds of arrows into the fortifications. Again and again, they assaulted the walls with siege towers, but the defenders pushed them back, sallying out to harass the attackers. So, Saladin changed tactics, attacking the city from the east with his host of siege artillery and Greek fire. Engineers tunneled under the defensive wall, collapsing a breach that his army took by assault. Inside, Christians carried out desperate acts of penance in hopes God would save them. They cut their hair, chanted prayers while walking the city barefoot, and Balian came to Saladin to negotiate a surrender. Though Saladin was not in the mood. He was generous to cities that capitulated without a fight, but by the customs of medieval warfare, a city that resisted got sacked. Heck, the Crusaders had done as much when they took Jerusalem, slaughtering the Muslim inhabitants. So Saladin stated he would kill the defenders and sell anyone left into slavery. To which Balian made a counter-threat. Breach the city, and they would not only slaughter the city's Muslim population, but destroy every mosque and shrine. Saladin took a moment and met with his captains, weighing the risk of damage against the possibility of looking weak to his allies. He decided to make the deal. The final negotiation centered around ransoms, with the Crusaders coming up with enough money to pay ransoms for 7,000 of their citizens, with the 15,000 they could not afford sold into slavery. However, Saladin was able to free 3,000 Muslims previously kept by the Crusaders as slaves, and in the spirit of celebration, he released nearly 1,000 Christian prisoners of war. The holy city was handed over without a bloody sack. Muslim clerics stripped the images out of the Dome of the Rock and purified the Temple Mount with incense and rosewater. Saladin then handpicked the cleric to give the first sermon there, a man who called the recovery of Jerusalem after 88 years a gift from God, comparing Saladin's achievement to that of the Prophet Muhammad himself. His victory was complete, casting Saladin as both a victorious general and a man of integrity. In taking Jerusalem, he had killed no innocents, treated captive noble women well, and abided by his oaths. Even when advisors pushed him, he refused to attack the ransomed Christians headed to Tyre, or destroy the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Again, very full of integrity, honorable as heck. Like, how could you not like him? Like, the dude just comes across as beyond likable, right? Like, at some points, probably even more likable than the Christians, so... Maybe not some points, maybe just the entire point, but, it's just a lot to like about the guy.
Reportedly built over Christ's tomb, but the backlash was already on its way. The Vatican, October 20th, 1187.
Oh, snap.
The Archbishop of Tyre approaches Pope Urban III. The Pope is surprised to see him so far from the Holy Land. The Archbishop kisses the Pope's ring and tells him of the disaster of Hattin, of the capture of King Guy, and of the loss of the true cross. He says Jerusalem is vulnerable. He doesn't know it's already fallen. Pope Urban's face goes red, then purple. His guards think it's rage, until the Holy Father coughs and grasps at his chest, dead of a heart attack, the last casualty of Hattin. But the word is out across Europe now, and nobles, including kings, are volunteering for a third crusade, including one that will prove himself Saladin's greatest foe, Richard the Lion.
Heck yeah, hype. So I'm gonna jump to that part, which will come out tomorrow. Bye, everyone.